For years, every critical moment in Philadelphia ran through number 36. Third and long, red zone, season on the line. The ball found Brian Westbrook. He wasn't the biggest player on the field. He wasn't the loudest voice in the huddle, but he was the solution. Screens became breakaways. Small gaps became first downs. When the pocket collapsed, he turned chaos into control. In the McNabb era, Westbrook wasn't just a running back. He was the offense's heartbeat. Defenses knew it. They prepared for it. It didn't matter. But greatness in football rarely comes without a cost. Every cut, every hit, every collision. The city celebrated the yards and the touchdowns. The game kept something else. This is the Eagles Chronicles, where we tell the real stories behind Philadelphia football. If you respect the players who gave everything to the Midnight Green, like this video, share it, and subscribe for more deep dive documentaries. Because before the cheers faded, there was Brian Westbrook and the price of being indispensable. Built for more than size. Brian Westbrook was born on September 2, 1979 in Washington, D.C., where competition was constant and respect was earned. From an early age, he understood something simple. If you weren't the biggest, you had to be the smartest. If you weren't the strongest, you had to be the quickest. Football wasn't about attention, it was about proving yourself. At Villanova, that mindset turned into dominance. Westbrook didn't arrive with national hype, but he left with numbers that forced people to notice. He rushed for thousands of yards, caught passes like a receiver, and returned punts with a vision that made defenders hesitate. He wasn't just productive, he was versatile, a player who could line up anywhere and hurt you from everywhere. And then there was the number that followed him everywhere, 5'8". In a league that often favored size at running back, Westbrook stood shorter than most of the defenders chasing him. But what some saw as limitation became leverage. Lower center of gravity, sharper cuts, balance through contact. He didn't overpower opponents, he slipped through them. Scouts questioned durability, analysts questioned workload. Could someone his size survive the NFL? Could he carry the kind of responsibility that championship teams demand? He wasn't built like a star, but at Villanova, he proved something more important. He played like one. Drafted without hype, 2002. When the 2002 NFL Draft arrived, Brian Westbrook wasn't a headline selection. He wasn't projected as a franchise back. The Philadelphia Eagles selected him in the 3rd round, a valuable pick, but not the kind that comes with immediate expectations. He entered a roster that already had established names. He wasn't drafted to take over, he was drafted to contribute. In Andy Reid's system, roles were earned, not gifted. Westbrook began where many mid-round picks do, on special teams, in rotational packages, waiting for opportunity. Early touches were limited, carries were scarce, but when the ball found him, something shifted. The burst was different, the patience was noticeable, the efficiency stood out. Nothing was handed to him, every snap required proof, every assignment demanded execution. He studied protections, he refined routes, he learned the offense from the inside out. Gradually, the coaching staff began to trust him in bigger moments, 3rd downs, red zone packages, late-game drives. Trust doesn't arrive overnight, it builds quietly, and Westbrook built it the same way he built everything else, through consistency, through preparation, through results. He wasn't drafted to be the star, he was drafted to earn it. The ultimate weapon. Brian Westbrook wasn't just a running back, he was a mismatch disguised as one. In Andy Reid's offense, versatility mattered, and Westbrook became the perfect answer to every defensive question. He could run between the tackles, he could split out wide like a receiver, he could catch the ball in traffic and turn a short screen into a game-changing gain. The more defenses tried to label him, the harder he became to contain. The screen game became his signature. Linemen released, defenders hesitated, and suddenly Westbrook was in open space, reading blocks like a quarterback reads coverage. It wasn't just speed, it was vision, patience, timing. He made the routine feel dangerous.
With Donovan McNabb under center, the partnership felt natural. When protection broke down, 36 found McNabb. When drives stalled on third down, 36 found the first down marker. In tight games, in loud stadiums, in moments where mistakes decided seasons, the ball found Westbrook. Defenses knew it. They adjusted for it. It didn't matter. He wasn't the loudest star on the field. He wasn't the biggest name in the huddle, but he was the offense's stabilizer, the player who kept everything moving when everything else felt uncertain. The 2007 peak. By 2007, Brian Westbrook wasn't just part of the offense, he was the offense. It was the finest season of his career. Over 1,200 rushing yards, more than 90 receptions, double-digit touchdowns. Every statistical category reflected what Eagles fans already felt. Number 36 was carrying the unit. Analysts began to whisper about MVP consideration, not because he was flashy, because he was indispensable. Defenses couldn't predict his role. Line up in the backfield and he'd punish you between the tackles. Shift him into the slot and he'd beak linebackers in space. Leave him unchecked on a screen and the chains were moving. He wasn't just productive, he was efficient in the moments that mattered most. During the playoff push, when the margin for error narrowed and every possession carried weight, the pattern became obvious. Third and short, red zone, 2-minute drill. The ball found him. When the offense needed a play, it went through 36. It wasn't about volume, it was about timing. And in 2007, Brian Westbrook became the heartbeat of a team that trusted him to deliver when everything tightened.
The playoff heartbreaks. For all the production, for all the brilliance, January told a different story. Brian Westbrook was there for every near miss. When the Eagles fell short in the NFC Championship against the Giants, when seasons that felt destined for more ended one game too early, when hope rose and then cracked under pressure. In 2008, the run felt different. The team found rhythm late, the belief returned. Westbrook delivered when called upon, fighting through contact, absorbing hits that mattered more in January than they ever did in September. And once again, the Eagles stood one win away from the Super Bowl. The opponent? Arizona. The margin? Razor thin. The result? Another ending without confetti. He wasn't the reason they lost. He was rarely the weakness, but he was always there. In the huddle, in the backfield, in the biggest moments when the door closed. The Patriots' year, the Giants' loss, the Cardinals' heartbreak. Different seasons, same outcome. He gave the offense everything he had, and every time the finish line came into view, it moved just out of reach. The hits add up. The numbers told one story, the body told another. Year after year, Brian Westbrook absorbed contact that most players never fully recover from. Screens meant defenders closing at full speed. Runs between the tackles meant collisions with linebackers built to punish. Every touch demanded impact. Every yard required contact. His style invited it. Low center of gravity, explosive cuts, fearless finishes. But durability has limits, even for players who refuse to show it. Concussions began to surface, minor at first, then more serious. In 2009, a heavy hit left him on the turf, and the concern was immediate. The game paused, the questions grew louder. Not about production, about health. It wasn't one hit, it was years of them. The workload that made him indispensable had quietly accumulated. Football had celebrated the toughness, but beneath the highlight plays, something else was building. Something no stat sheet could measure. The sudden end. There was no final curtain call, no farewell run, no dramatic last drive. As injuries mounted and roles shifted, Brian Westbrook's touches began to shrink. The offense moved in new directions. Younger legs entered the backfield. The player who once carried every critical snap was now fighting for fewer of them. In 2010, the Eagles released him. Not with bitterness, not with spectacle, just a quiet acknowledgement that the era had changed.
He signed briefly with the San Francisco 49ers, searching for one more chapter, one more stretch of relevance. But the spark that once defined him flickered only in flashes. Careers often end with a defining moment. His didn't. It faded. No dramatic goodbye, no final highlight replayed endlessly, just the slow realization that the body could no longer answer the demands it once embraced. The engine of the offense didn't explode, it simply went quiet. Life after football. When the cleats came off, Brian Westbrook didn't disappear, he redirected. Football had defined his routine for years, now it defined his perspective. He stepped into coaching, mentoring younger players who were chasing the same dreams he once carried. The lessons he passed on weren't about highlight plays, they were about preparation, durability, and understanding the cost of the game before it asks for it. Westbrook also became more open about health, about concussions, about recovery, about the importance of transparency. He didn't frame his story as a tragedy, he framed it as responsibility. If the next generation could learn from what his body endured, then the years of contact meant something beyond statistics. Community work followed, engagement, leadership, a quieter influence than touchdowns and playoff runs, but meaningful in a different way. His story didn't end on the turf, it evolved. The player who once carried an offense began carrying perspective. Proof that what football takes doesn't have to define what comes next. Time has a way of sharpening perspective. Brian Westbrook's name now sits in the Eagles Hall of Fame, not as a headline star, but as a foundational piece of an era that kept Philadelphia relevant year after year. The debate lingers. Was he the most underrated Eagle of the 2000s? The numbers argue loudly. The impact argues louder. Before the league embraced hybrid running backs who could line up in the slot and dominate in space, Westbrook was already doing it. He blurred the line between runner and receiver. He made versatility essential. In many ways, he became the blueprint for the modern dual-threat back, a player who didn't just carry the ball, but carried the offense. He gave everything: effort, versatility, reliability. He showed up in the moments that mattered and absorbed the hits that made those moments possible. But football took his prime. And that tension defines his legacy, not as a cautionary tale, not as a tragedy, but as proof that greatness often demands more than it returns. Some players are remembered for rings, others are remembered for what they gave. And in Philadelphia, Brian Westbrook is remembered for both the brilliance and the cost that came with it. He wasn't the biggest player on the field. He wasn't the loudest voice in the locker room. He wasn't the most marketed star of his era. But for a stretch of years, he was the heart of the Eagles' offense. When drives stalled, he kept them alive. When games tightened, the ball found him. When the city needed belief, he carried it quietly. Brian Westbrook didn't redefine football with spectacle. He did it with reliability. With cuts that froze defenses, with hands that secured third downs, with a body that absorbed more than most ever saw. He gave Philadelphia everything he had. And sometimes that's exactly what the game takes. This has been the Eagles Chronicles, where we tell the real stories behind the players who shaped Philadelphia football, not just the highlights, but the sacrifice behind them. If this story moved you, like the video, share it with fellow fans, and subscribe for more deep dive documentaries into the legends who gave everything to the Midnight Green. Because some careers aren't defined by how they ended, but by how much they gave along the way.